Welcome to the Veterinary Culture Lab, where science meets real-world application. I'm Andi Davison.
And I'm Josh Weissman. Together, we'll show you an evidence-based blueprint for renovating culture in your veterinary team, one episode at a time.
Positive psychology is the foundation of everything we do here at Flourish. And in this first episode, Josh and I are breaking down exactly what it is, what it isn't, and why it matters so much in veterinary medicine. Hey, Josh, how are you?
I'm pretty good, Andi. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely.
What's new? What's going on with you, man?
I got to tell you, this past weekend I had a great opportunity. As both of us are friends with Clint Latham from Luca Veterinary Data Security, and
Yes.
Craig Spinks from Vetios.
Two of the best.
Yes, two of the very best. And I have the fortune of living in the same state as both of these amazing human beings. And so this past Saturday, I got to hop in my car and pick up Craig down near Denver and then drive up to what Clint refers to as the best slope in Colorado, where he lives out in Western Colorado, and visit with Clint and meet his firstborn son, Jaden, which was super, super fun. And of course, to make light of things, that's a long drive, so on and so forth. I'm a fan of dad jokes, as I think you know. So, I was tossing out a few dad jokes here and there. And at one point in time, both Clint and Craig told me that they thought that my dad jokes were childish, which I thought was completely nuts because my dad jokes are obviously full grown.
And there it is.
And there it is.
How did they respond to that particular dad joke?
Yeah, I actually haven't tested that one out on them, but I will soon. I will soon.
Well,
it's a good task for me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love that. How fun that you got to go and spend time with them. What a fun day.
It was awesome. It was perfect weather. It was a great drive. I had a blast. Got to see Clint and his wife and their newborn son and hang out with the two Woodles, which anybody who follows Clint on LinkedIn is going to know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It was a blast. It was a good time.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Did you have a good weekend?
I did. I did something that I think would shock probably you and a lot of other people.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what this is.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
I watched Jaws for the very first time.
Wait a second. Are you serious? This is the first time you've seen that movie?
First time.
Okay. If you were of a different age bracket, I could probably give some grace. But that is like, you and I are the same age. That is a classic film from our childhood. So worth it.
Fantastic. I will say that I'm glad I didn't watch it as a kid because it would have scared the shit out of me. I mean, come on, huge shark in the water. Like, yes.
Yeah.
I'm already not a fan of swimming in deep water that I can't see the bottom of. And this would have completely reiterated that fear. But man, like, so good. I mean, some of the shots, the dialogue, the characters. Well done, Steven Spielberg. For such an early movie in his career, like knocked it out of the park. It was really good. Yeah, I really liked it. So
For sure. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I know, fun, right? Oh, funny. All right, let's jump in. Are you ready to jump into this?
I'm always ready, Andi.
I know. Always good conversation. Cool. All right. Well, since we're telling stories, I'm going to ask you for one more story. And the story I'd like to hear about this time is something from your life that kind of describes a time where you were out there, right? You were doing it. You were getting stuff done, but you weren't really thriving, right?
Oh, okay.
You were just showing up, checking boxes. You were probably successful at those box checking, but you weren't feeling it. You weren't vibing and thriving.
You're vibing and thriving. There it is. Awesome. Okay. So just to be clear, so you're looking for an example of a time in my life when things were fine. They were going well. It just didn't feel like, unicorns and rainbows party time.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to choose something from my professional career.
Great. Yeah. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So the first practice that I was managing, I was a partner in this practice, was a small animal hospital. And when we when we took over the practice, there were a lot of struggles going on within the hospital, and we spent a lot of time kind of rebuilding things. And then there was a point in time where I felt like we hit what I refer to as cruise control. Like everything was going fine. Every day we'd have clients coming in. We had a good team. We delivered great medicine. The practice was making money. Like all the stuff was going well. And I remember at first being like really delighted that we had reached that pinnacle, I guess you could say. And then it turned into this feeling of like relief, of like, oh my God, I don't have to hustle anymore. And then it turned into, I can only describe it as an itch. Like, I'd come into work every day and things would be fine. They would be taken care of. Everything would be going well. But I felt like there's something missing here. There's something more to be done, but I don't know what it is. And I found myself sort of going on this like almost hamster wheel like chase of trying to find what the thing was. It felt like there was a piece missing. There wasn't anything obviously wrong, but it felt like something wasn't there.
Yeah. And it sounds like you were doing it. You were going in and you were getting things done and you were rolling along and there were no big catastrophic roadblocks, right?
Yeah. No, not at all. Like I said, we made payroll, we were profitable. So from the financial perspective, there wasn't any real stress or concern. This was at a time when, it was obviously well before COVID. And so, veterinary practices and the demand for veterinary practices were growing. We were in a community that was super pet friendly. And so, we had some really wonderful clients. The team was pretty solid. We weren't having a lot of turnover. We had all worked together for a while. We kind of knew each other. We had recently brought on, 2 new doctors, I think, at that point in time. And the facility was in good condition. There were no major concerns or worries. There literally was like nothing wrong in the practice. And yet it led to this weird feeling of discomfort and, concern of like, well, wait a second. There must be something else I need to be doing. There must be something more to this. Like this just somehow didn't feel enough. I want to be really clear though here. Like it wasn't a lack of enoughness in terms of like, oh, I've got to go out there and make more money or, expand the practice. It just felt like, wow, everything is just fine, but something is missing to make it feel great. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
There actually is a term for that feeling, right? That feeling of ho-hum, we're getting it done. On the outside, everything looks like it's rolling along the way that it should be. But on the inside, you're just looking for more. You're looking for something to kind of light that spark. Yeah. That term is something that a psychologist that I know you've heard of by the name of Corey Keyes describes as languishing.
Yeah.
Languishing, right?
Yep.
So you're just kind of indifferent. You're just going along and doing the thing. And this sounds to me like you were experiencing languishing.
Yeah.
You were just showing up, checking boxes, getting stuff done, kind of relieved that you didn't have to hustle, but also kind of missing some magic, missing some spark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Andi, a few years ago, Adam Grant wrote a really great piece. It was actually like during kind of the peak of COVID, and he wrote this really great piece on languishing. And if I recall correctly, he described it in a way that really resonated with me. He said it was like you're on a boat, okay, by yourself out on a lake, and it's perfect weather. There's not a strong wind. The temperature is just fine and comfortable. There's no big waves on the water. Your boat is sound. There's no leaks in it. There's no problems with the boat whatsoever. Everything is sort of like good conditions. And yet you're on this boat and there's no sail, much less wind in your sails. And there's no motor and there's no paddle. You're just kind of floating about with whatever direction the currents take you. And that's how he described languishing. And I think that that is very much how I was feeling in that moment. Nothing was clearly wrong. There weren't any obvious problems. And yet, to use your words, I felt like there was like a spark. The magic was missing. There was something more that I couldn't quite uncover to feel like, that's where I want to put the winds behind my sails and move in that direction.
Mm-hmm. It's a good metaphor. Leave it to Adam Grant to create a fantastic metaphor, right?
Of course. Of course.
Yep. No, and I mean, I'm with you. When I've had moments in my life, in my career, where I felt like that. And I honestly didn't know what it was, right? I didn't know why I was feeling that way. I didn't know what was going on. And there was a part of me that thought, well, there's something wrong with me because I should be happier, right? I should be thriving. There should be a spark. I should be all like enamored with this because everything's going pretty well. But I wasn't. And I kind of thought I was the only one. And when I read about this, it hit me square in the chest because I was like, oh, yes, I've experienced that too. That's a thing. Yeah. That's a real thing. That's just not my brain creating a thing. That is a real thing. And I got really excited to learn more about that and that there was a term about that. And honestly, the thing that I got even more excited to learn about is that there is a way to deliberately move past that point, right? To deliberately move past that sort of neutral zone of life and strive to get north of neutral and to move in the direction of thriving and flourishing. And that came with my awareness and education surrounding the science of positive psychology and what positive psychology is and how it can support us in our thriving and flourishing as a human. And that opened a whole can because it made me realize that it's possible.
Yeah.
And that we have a say in it, which was even more exciting, right? Something I had control over.
Yeah. You don't have to be the passive passenger on the boat waiting for the wind to pick up. You can actually create your own wind. Yep.
And that it's possible. And so that concept, right? That science of positive psychology got me really excited because it was there. Like somebody else had done the research. Somebody else had recognized this.
Yeah.
The conversations were being had. And me as a human, I qualified, right? Like I was a human too. And so I qualified for this. Like this pertained to me because I was a human. Yes. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit more about today because, at Flourish, that's the foundation of what we do. We are built upon a foundation of positive psychology. And so understanding more about kind of what that is, the thought behind it, some of the science behind it, is a really valuable place to start this big conversation. So you game? You want to talk about that?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So lots of us will know, right, is that the founding father of positive psychology is an awesome guy by the name of Dr. Martin Seligman. He's a cool dude. I would love to meet him. I'd be a total fangirl, like freaking out in the side of the room and like do something stupid and make a fool out of myself. But it would be worth it, right? Because I got to meet Martin Seligman. But he is considered the founding father. And in, the 1990s, he started to think a little bit more about, we do a lot of research. We spend a lot of time looking at what's wrong with people, what's causing them to struggle, what's contributing to their challenge, and how do they work past that? What if we also studied what's right with people, what they're already doing that's helping them move north of neutral, right? Yeah. What strengths do they have? What can they bring to the table? How are they contributing? What if we studied that?
Yeah, mind blown.
Right? And it's like it took till the 1990s to get there, but they got there. And that sort of started the movement, the positive psychology movement that has since gained a ton of momentum, excuse me, which I'm thankful for. And it's starting to become more common of a conversation, right? It's starting to become more normal to have these conversations about what promotes our thriving and what can promote our flourishing, because it's not just about dealing with the challenge and the struggle and the crisis. It's about how do we also deal with that and take steps towards thriving.
Yeah.
And so in this journey, he started to kind of ask those questions and work with others to kind of figure out what that looked like. There's a bunch of really big hitters that came in to continue this conversation with him. And, like we are as humans, there were some people that kind of pushed back on him a little bit. And they had questions about the science of positive psychology. And they were a little bit like, well, they butted him, right? And so Dr. Seligman had to kind of respond to that and kind of step up and let everybody know a little bit more detail what positive psychology was all about. And I had the pleasure of stumbling across an article where he did just this.
Yeah.
So this article is his response to a naysayer. Yeah. This person had some questions. They weren't really sure. They kind of had some pushbacks on Dr. Seligman. And so Marty, which I maybe would call him if I met him in real life. I don't know.
Oh, for sure. Unequivocally.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Marty had some things to say about it. And his responses are fascinating. And I love them.
Yeah.
So in the article, he goes through about 4 or 5 questions. And 2 of them really stood out to me because they're questions that I bet I'm going to ask you after I share the questions if you've ever heard people ask you them before, because I've had a handful of people that will come up to me after events or even in like conversations over dinner. These questions will come up. And
absolutely,
I'm sure a lot of people are thinking them too, and they're just not saying it. So the 2 questions that really stood out to me here, and the 2 questions that, I'd love to get deeper into and talk more about. First one, is it positive psychology? Josh, isn't it just happyology? Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? And the second one is, positive psychology, isn't it just positive, good vibes only thinking warmed over?
Yeah.
So those are the 2 big ones that really stand out to me.
Yeah. I think those are great questions to dive into. I'm really grateful for the work that Seligman and others have been doing. This paper in particular. So I hadn't read this paper, Andi, before you found it and shared it, and it was a really, really wonderful read. Well, obviously, we'll be sure to share that in the show notes. The paper itself. It was in Psychological Inquiry in 2003. The title of the paper was simply "Positive Psychology FAQs," and it was Martin Seligman and James Pawelski, both at the University of Pennsylvania. So we'll be sure to share that. Yeah, I love this stuff. One of the things that attracted me in particular to positive psychology 8 or 9 years ago, whatever it was, when I did this master's, was this idea of, studying the nutrients that contribute to the good life, as Seligman would refer to it. And it stood out to me in part because it really isn't happyology. It's not about just like, hey, just be happier. Hey, just see the silver lining in things. Hey, just figure out a way to ignore the bad feelings that you're experiencing or avoid them at all costs. Rather, it's this idea that the good life is not necessarily the pleasant life. That, our pursuit of trying to feel good all the time, only quote unquote positive emotions, is not actually a path to the good life. It's actually, in some ways, there's research that suggests it's the path in the opposite direction. That those of us who are like primarily here for the party, as Barb Fredrickson would refer to it, really actually struggle a lot. And what Seligman was trying to identify, I think, in large part, was this idea that if we're going to experience a life that's worth living, a life that we can be proud of at the end of it, a life that we can look back upon on our final moments and feel like, I did it, and I did it to the best of my ability, and it was worth it. That's going to come with discomfort. That's going to come with challenges along the way, because this is not just a life about feeling happy. This is a life about meaningfulness, about growth and development, about cultivating strong, deep, enduring relationships. And all of those things take work, and all of those things come with discomfort. So I love that he addressed that directly. He and Pawelski addressed that directly in this article. Like, this is not happyology. In fact, it's quite the opposite. What did you think about that section?
I loved that section, right? And I loved that he used the word happyology, because I'm I'm going to be honest with you, right? When I very first was introduced to the concept of positive psychology, I was like, positive psychology? Like, what is this? Just everything's great all the time. Like that thought crossed my mind. And so for him to kind of answer that and take that head on, like, yes, I was so happy to see that. And when I, read their comments and read kind of their responses to that, your takeaway stood out to me. And there was one thing at the end that Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky contributed. And it had to do with experiencing our positive emotions. And that, yeah, we want to experience our positive emotions. And we really want to experience those positive emotions when we feel like we worked to earn them and that we deserve them. Yes. And a lot of times that comes from working through some of the challenges, right? Having to deal with some of the things that are less than awesome, growing and being resilient and having to manage some of the stuff that isn't great. And that to me really reiterated, it was like mind blown kind of thing, because it's not just about the balance of negative and positive. It's the reminder that we need the negative so that we can learn and grow and develop and get better because of it. And that will actually make our positive emotions that much more impactful and valuable because we will have earned them. And you said it great. Like, I did it. Like at the end of your life, you'll look back and go, I did it.
I did that. Yeah.
I earned that. I deserved that. That was great. And that was just a really neat sort of thing that stood out.
I think that's super insightful. I'm really glad that you brought that up. There's a quote, and I actually highlighted it. I've got the article in front of me so that I could read it. That speaks to what you were saying. He writes, or they write, there is a cost of getting happiness cheaply. However, when the shortcuts become one's principal road to happiness, positive emotion alienated from positive character leads to emptiness. And there's actually quite a bit of literature that suggests that, like, when we live lives of discomfort, we become increasingly incapable of dealing with discomfort. So that the positive things that come to us don't actually feel positive anymore, but the discomforts that are inevitable in our lives become so unbearable that we can't actually deal with them. In order to live a life worth living, we need discomfort. Echoing what you said. Yeah, there has to be some of that. Yeah. I agree. I think that's a great transition to the second question that you were really interested in with his idea. Isn't positive psychology just positive thinking? What did you take away from that?
The big thing that I took away from that stemmed from the example that they shared. So in the article, they talk about the value of optimistic thinking and pessimistic thinking, and that pessimistic thinking can actually be valuable, and that there are a lot of times when it's actually preferred. And the example that they used in the paper had to do with pilots and de-icing your plane and the decision to de-ice the plane. My brain, of course, went directly to vet med, right? Because this one to me was like, hello, vet med, like here it is. The value of realistic and pessimistic thinking happens kind of, I'm going to say it, kind of often in what we do for a living, right? Because let's say Bella comes in to your clinic and she comes in because she's vomiting and has diarrhea.
Sure.
It would not be helpful for Bella if we went into the room and said, she'll be okay. She's totally fine. Like, we'll just give her some yogurt. It'll be no problem. Make sure she stays hydrated. Everything will be great. That optimistic, right? Like good vibes only type thinking is not helpful whatsoever in this situation. Realistic and even pessimistic thinking is going to fuel that critical thinking, right? That curiosity that we as veterinary professionals have when it comes to our patients. Why is she vomiting? What's going on? How long has that been happening? Let's get a really good history from mom. Let's run some blood work. Let's take some radiographs, right? Let's worry, and I'm doing quote fingers, worry just a little bit about what's going on with Bella so that we can get curious enough to dig deep enough to find some answers so that we can create a treatment plan for her that's effective and will hopefully help her through whatever she's dealing with. And that was a huge takeaway for me because I was like, oh my goodness, this is vet med, right? This is how we function when it comes to our patients. And there's value in that. And
I totally agree.
balancing that, right, with
Yes.
that positive outlook and that awareness is critical.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think ultimately what this area of study is about, when it comes to this idea of, their response to the positive thinking, I think the idea here is that we know fairly unequivocally that overt pessimism is a disservice to most of us from a psychological and physiological perspective over time. That those of us who are just like, we resort to worst case scenario for everything we do, are prone to higher levels of anxiety, depression. There's physiological challenges that can come along with that. Pessimism as a lifestyle is not helpful. We also know that optimism as a lifestyle comes with challenges, that sometimes overt optimism gets in the way of us seeing the world for what it really is. One example of this that they talked about here that goes to that pilot example you talked about, or the, Bella, the ADR Bella, is that when we lean too heavily into optimism too frequently, when it becomes our default mode, we run the risk of missing details. Like, we're not good at seeing sort of like, the trees within the forest. All we can see is sometimes not even the forest. All we can see is the blue sky and sunlight above it. And the forest might be on fire and we just don't even notice it, right? And so we have to find a way to balance these things out. And positive psychology is really an approach to helping us understand the upside and benefits of developing optimism, the fact that optimism can actually be developed, and learning how to balance when to use it and when not to. A resource that I'll share that we can put in the show notes as well for everybody. There's a really great book by Todd Kashdan and Robert B. Swastiner, who are both like titans in the field of applied positive psychology. Yeah. It's called The Upside of Your Dark Side. And essentially what they do is they talk about, kind of all of the research that shows that, like, positive thinking is not beneficial. It's not helpful. There are times when we want to, try and be cognizant of the silver linings and things and so on and so forth. But ultimately, as a lifestyle, positive thinking or negative thinking, none of those benefit us. And so the upside of your dark side talks about a lot of that and ways to help balance those things out.
That sounds like a great resource. I haven't read that yet. I'm going to have to add that to the list. I have a huge list. A huge list. Oh,
the ongoing stack. Yeah.
I know. That's all right. I'll take it.
So I guess the question is, what do we do with all this stuff?
Right. There's so much. There's so much to do, but it all has to start from somewhere, right? And when I first got going, right, in the science of positive psychology, and I were first I dipped my toe in and I kind of went, well, it's a happyology. Oh, okay. And then I waded in deeper and I was about ankle deep and was like, oh yeah. And I just jumped in. And I remember one of the first big sort of deliberate changes that I made within myself had to do with some language changes, because they were something I could control and they were small and approachable. And it was swapping the word but for and.
Yeah.
So think about it. When you want to say, I watched Jaws this weekend and it was really great, but I'm scared to go in the water because now there's a shark in there. Okay. There's your opportunity, right? So instead of but, you change that for and. Gosh, I watched Jaws this weekend. It was really great. And now I understand why I'm a little concerned about deep water. There may be sharks in there.
There may be sharks in there. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so just making that conscious effort to swap out but for and was a huge step for me. My friends started to notice, and I noticed that they started to do it too. And it really kind of changes the feel and the tone. It doesn't change the fact, right? It doesn't change the fact that there are sharks in the water and Andi is scared to go swimming in the ocean. It doesn't change that. But it flips that script a little bit And it creates a more sort of balanced approach
Yes.
to whatever it is, shark related that I'm talking about. So that swap, that but for and, that was a big one for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Andy, because it's essentially like training yourself to lean into the balance that we're talking about here. I think sometimes we mislead ourselves into believing that we either feel a positive emotion or a negative emotion, when in reality, we know, from neuroscience and neuropsychology that we can experience myriad emotions all concurrently, all at the same time. You can be both excited and anxious, like you can be both happy and melancholy. Yeah, all those things happen at the same time. And so by you switching from, the word but to the word and, I said but, the word but to the word and, it's sort of like training yourself, and through social contagion, apparently others, it seems like it wears off on your friends too, or rubs off on your friends. I think that's great. I would add to that a takeaway that I think leverages that as well. I'm a little bit obsessed with leadership and people in leadership positions and how we interact.
No.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tie it into there. I think that we have opportunities when we're interacting with our teams to use that both and in a way that validates, and it creates this openness to building a more positive space, which is really what positive psychology is trying to help us do. It's not just about how do I experience a life, the good life, but how do we create interactions, institutions, and organizations that are about cultivating the good life. And so I think as leaders, we can use that. So for example, I don't know, I come into work, I'm a practice manager, you're my technician manager, and you seem to be not having a great day. And I pull you aside and say, hey, Andy, what's going on? And you tell me about some struggles you're having with one of the technicians on your team, and it feels like the coaching isn't working and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. I can use that both and in that moment. I can validate what you're saying. Wow, Andy, it seems like you're really having a tough time. This has got to be wearing on you. And I can't imagine what I know about you that nothing is working with your interactions with this technician. Tell me about the things that you feel like have had even incremental impact. And we can start exploring those things and building on them, which is what positive psychology essentially advocates for. How do we identify the strengths, the things that are part of our character, the best parts of who we are, and how do we build on those things? So that's another action step I think folks can take from this article.
Yeah. So many opportunities, right?
So many opportunities.
I know.
If only we had hours and hours to talk about them.
Speaking of butts.
Yeah.
I would like to close out our conversation with this week's Florida man.
Yeah.
Are you ready? You ready for this? Right?
Yeah.
So living in Florida gives me the authority to embrace Florida man, right? Like I get to make fun of myself for living here because I live here. And one of those things is Florida man. Yeah. So Florida man is this creature that is usually full of rage and bad decisions. And it makes for some hilarious headlines.
Yes.
And so this week's Florida man headline, I've got to share it because it cracked me up. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Florida man takes blowtorch to ATM, welds it shut instead. Right? So apparently in Okaloosa Island, Florida, which is up in the Panhandle near Pensacola, authorities say that 2 Florida burglars thought they were clever when they used a blowtorch to break into an ATM machine.
ATM. Yeah.
But they never hit the jackpot. Instead, the burning heat actually welded the ATM hinges shut.
That is
right?
amazing.
They're poor decisions.
Yeah, that is amazing. Florida man.
Good old Florida man.
What would we do without Florida man in this world? That's a good
I know.
one.
It'd be less entertaining.
I assume you have a link to that article so we can entertain
Oh, yes.
people.
It will definitely. Yep. It will definitely be in the show notes because everyone needs a good laugh, a good Florida man laugh. Yep.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, good. This was a good conversation. I thank you for your insight and your thoughts and your stories.
Yeah, thanks for finding this really cool paper. I'm definitely adding it to my library.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what everybody thinks. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. So if you have a chance to read it and think about it and process it, we would love to hear what you think.
100%. Awesome. Thanks, Andi.
All right. Till next time. See you later. Thanks for hanging out with us in the Veterinary Culture Lab, powered by the science of workplace well-being and brought to you by Flourish Veterinary Consulting. If today's episode sparked an idea, made you smile, or got you thinking, hey, I should totally try that, let us know. What do you think? Be sure to subscribe, share, and remember, a thriving veterinary culture is possible, and you don't have to build it alone.